today I took a topic I wanted to talk to you about that is very important, and it's not about what stage of your career you're at, whether you're a senior, junior member, but this one thing is very important for anyone in the company. So I thought I would do my take on this, just a recap of what it is and what is feedback and what is radical candor. I'll explain this later on. But it's important that we have an open culture where you all feel you can give feedback, you can receive feedback, because feedback is an important aspect for an organization and for an individual in the organization, for them to grow along with the company to grow. So that's why I thought it's important a topic. Let me do my take on this today. So that's just a formal definition of a feedback, right? What is feedback? Feedback is basically useful information or criticism or review of something or an activity, performance, behavior of an individual or a business or organization. And why feedback? Feedback is given or received so that a person or a company can improve on their performance or behavior or their activities. So that's the formal definition of a feedback, why it's important. Now, next topic, we want to talk about why feedback is important. Feedback is very important for, as I said, an organization and the individual employees, because when you receive feedback, when you know how you are doing, it acts as a motivational factor for you. Just like when I take welcome calls with many of you, and I know I'm seeing a lot of new faces. You guys have joined us in the last 6 months or to a year. And one of the things that I always mention to you that how SJI started and what made us continue this journey. And one of the things was this bringing success to client that made us motivated to want to continue doing this. And how that motivation came about is because client were giving us the feedback. Once we are able to deliver something to a client told us that they were happy, satisfied, and that feedback made us want to continue on this journey. Continue on this journey, and it's the feedback that we received that made us motivated. So that's one of the reasons feedback is important in order for an employee, a team member, to keep them motivated. It gives them a good boost when they know they are doing, how they are doing, if they're doing a good job. The other important point for feedback is it increases productivity. So if you think about yourself, whenever somebody gives you a good badge, or when you hear as a positive feedback about yourself, automatically it gives you that rush, that good feeling, which makes you want to do even better. So it helps to increase productivity. So it's not just the company's productivity, but it's as an individual. When you are receiving feedback, when you get a pat on the back, okay, good job, this really gives you motivation, which makes you more productive, because you want to achieve more of this praises, more of this feedback, and you get yourself even more up and running and productive to get more things done. When we receive constructive feedback, right, it creates an environment where you feel more comfortable. It provides a safer environment around you, where you know that you will be told if you are making any errors in a manner that is constructive and will help you to improve. So it creates that environment within the organization, within the team, that you're confident that you can make mistake, you will receive the guidance, the help, the feedback from your peers, from the people around you, which makes this in workplace a more positive one. It makes the actual environment where you are confident and comfortable working, because you're not in fear. You don't have to worry because you're going to make a mistake and somebody is going to tell you off or have a really toxic environment. So that's why feedback, giving each other feedback, creates that constructive feedback, again, creates that environment, that positivity in the office place that really helps to bond amongst team members as well. The other point of why feedback is important is because feedback helps to retain. That's for more for an organization as an individual, helps to retain employees. Because when you are a safer environment, when you know that people are there to guide you on the right path, they're going to tell you if you're doing something wrong. They're going to help you to learn and grow. This is where you are at an environment that you don't want to leave. You want to stay in this place because you know that this is the place where you will be growing in your career in a safer environment with getting the right kind of feedback, right kind of guidance. So that's another point why feedback is important for an organization as for an individual. And for an organization, it's a great thing that you can retain team members. You don't have to always be looking for new team members and losing old team members quickly, because you have created that environment where people feel they're receiving their enough feedback, they're being guided, they're helped to grow. So that also helps to retain employees for longer and for an individual to stay in the company too. The other very important point is corrective feedback ensures learning. So a lot of you have joined new and this is your first job, your beginning of your career. A lot of the things you are not sure about, you're exposed to a lot of new things, some mistakes you're making. So when corrective feedback is provided, which means somebody constructively telling you what you did wrong, where you need to improve on, this actually helps the learning process of a team member too, because this is how you learn. There's another phrase we all know, that you learn through mistakes. But when those mistakes are pointed out in a constructive manner and somebody is there to guide you, you actually learn faster, you learn more. So that's why feedback is very important for an individual of a company or even the organization, because this is where you create, as I'm saying, you create that environment where people receive the correct type of feedback. They're told where they're making the mistakes, and they actually learn much faster, learn more from this. The other point of feedback, which is why it's important, is when you receive feedback on time and the correct manner and use constructive, it helps you to not only learn, but it also helps you to learn to stop making the same mistakes, which means you avoid making those mistakes and you actually improve yourself. So that's why another point of feedback is when you hear when you've done something wrong, then you actually do work on yourself to improve on that. Whereas if nobody tells you and you're doing something wrong, you continuously make that same mistakes without really knowing you're making that mistake. That means you're not really having any room to improve. So that's why feedback is even essential for people to acknowledge and understand and learn the mistakes they've made and actually improve on that mistake. And obviously having the feedback from your peers, from your team members, from your manager, it creates, as I said before, it's a safer, positive environment, and it creates a better working relationship in the organization. So when you work with people, you know that they give you the right feedback, the genuine feedback. You are more comfortable, you're confident, and it creates that environment, a better working relationship with your team members as well, because you feel you don't have to fear, you don't have to worry. Even if you make a mistake, somebody is there to guide you, to help you correct yourself, so you learn more, and that actually helps you to create that bonding amongst the team members. So that's just what I went through is a formula of why feedback is important for any organization or for an individual. Now, currently, what are the feedback processes we have in place at SJI? So we do quarterly feedback. That is the performance review for all team members, which is sent out quarterly. And feedback is collected from the respective pod members, from the team lead, from the manager. So different angle feedback is collected for an individual. So each one of you, and even each manager also receives their feedback from the team members. This is a formal form gets sent out by HR team. This information is collected and is put together. Now, also when we are collecting this feedback, we are reviewing to check that if there's any feedback where a team member requires to be informed and to be improved, this is then passed on to that member's respective manager, they would be discussing this during the one-to-one meeting with that team member about this feedback, so they can help them to improve on this. We have and obviously at the end of the year, end of fourth quarter. So the way SJI does is our yearly review happens in April. So end of the fourth quarter, we collect all the feedback together, and this is combined into make a decision on the whatever the outcome will be for this individual after their performance review is completed. So that's the formal review that happens at SJI, the feedbacks collected. The other feedbacks that's collected at SJI, the probationer's feedback. So when somebody joins new and you're during your probation period of the first 6 months, every month feedback is collected from the people, the pod members, your manager, or even the office with the local office members, because we also like to see how you are fitting in with the rest of the team members as well, and not just your pod members. And again, this feedback is always monitored and cascaded. So given a chance to an individual to make sure that they are performing, if they are making any mistakes, any errors, they're correcting themselves so that they can be confirmed by the end of their probation period. So that's opportunity is given as well. So that's a probationer's feedback. Office Vibe is a tool where been using it for a while now. I know some new members, you don't have access because they have actually stopped providing this for free, and they've gone into paid model, and we are not able to add any more new members to this. But this Office Vibe is a tool we were using for a few years, which actually collects the feedback from every team member to get the vibe of the company, so we understand where we stand. And one of the things with Office Vibe was it also compares your organization to where you stand in the market too. So this one tool we use to collect just general feedback of team member, how you're feeling. So certain questions are auto-generated by this software and asked to get the vibe of individual, how they're feeling or how the environment is of the company. We just started with the issues list last year, which is there's a form available that you can fill out with mentioning any issues, any problem, anything you've noticed. Or anything where you see there's room for improvement. We collect that feedback. This is managers are supposed to be discussing on the week sessions to see if some of the issues listed can be solved at local level, or some of the issues that are more company level are taken up to stakeholders meeting where we discuss and we try to solve those issues. The other way we collect feedback for SJI is the client feedback. So we do use a custom form to send out or email to send out to clients so we can collect feedback. So this is what currently exists in SJI. Now, the reason I want to bring this in, that these are all formal feedback. Now, what is important, you might think I just joined last week, I'm new, I'm at my job, I'm not in the position to give anybody feedback. I shouldn't be telling anybody anything because it's not my job. So this is where I want to mention that as soon as you step into an organization, it is your responsibility to provide that feedback to your team member, your colleague. It doesn't matter if you're junior or senior. And as you know, at SJI, how the environment is, what the culture is, being humble, doing great things together, right? Helping each other, embracing challenge, taking accountability. These are the culture points that ensures that we are trying to create that safer environment at SJI where you can feel confident to provide that constructive feedback to your member, to make your team member, your colleague accountable for the things they do. Now, one of the things I picked up on this one is what we call, and why I'll explain why I picked this, a radical candor, and how this relates to feedback. Now, the Radical Candor is a book written by Kim Scott, and it's sort of a methodology she has created of how to give proper feedback, how to be radically candor. And the reason I want to bring this in is being radically candor means you are being honest with your colleague. And being radically candor doesn't mean you have to be a manager or you have to be a team lead to do this. This is about creating that environment where you actually care for your team member enough that you tell them the feedback, that something that they're doing. Now, it doesn't always have to be a feedback about some work they've done. Simple thing like if somebody, when they're talking, we do have maybe sometimes people use the word a lot, or they say to, or some other things that they use. Or a better example actually I want to take, which Kim describes in her book and also her some of her podcast, is if suppose you notice your team member, they've had lunch and they have spinach stuck on their teeth, what do you do? So what radically candor is saying that you should care enough for your team member, and you should take them aside and be confident enough to tell them, you might want to go to the bathroom and check yourself because you have something stuck on your teeth. Instead of letting your team member walk around like this all day, laughing about him or her behind their back. This is also not, not the type of environment you want to be in or you want to create for yourself or for the organization. So what radically candor is saying that you have to really genuinely care for your team member. When you're coming into office, there was Kim explains this really well, that in the past we were told that be professional at work, leave your leave your personal self at home and be professional when you step into the door to the work. What Kim is saying, that that's not actually true. You have to be the person you are. You have to bring your whole self to work in order for you to care enough for the people around you and to establish that relationship with people around you so that you can be radically candor. You can tell them the truth or what is required for them to improve. So radically candor, the main important points of radical candor is being humble, being helpful. It's immediate. So there's no point you giving a feedback for something that happened 2 months ago. It becomes irrelevant. So what you need to do is your feedback has to be instant. When you notice something, you should be telling your team member. And as I said, it's not only manager. Each one of you, even if you joined yesterday, your junior, if you're seeing something, if you notice something, it should be it's an obligation you have. It's a moral obligation. You have to let your colleague know that, or your team member know that this is something, a feedback. Again, these are being humble and it's constructive. It's not also about pointing finger at people always. And that this other person, the other next point is very important, that says it's in person. That means obviously for us, we are working remotely, but in person still means at least go on the call with the individual person and tell them directly and not in public. So you criticize in private and you praise in public. So the feedback, if it's a good job, great job, you mention it in public. If it's a criticism, if it's something they need to work on, they need to improve on, you do that in private. And it's not about personality. So you should always avoid taking somebody and telling them something because of the person they are, the personality they have, and whoever receiving the feedback also. That's very equally important. Not just giving feedback, but receiving feedback is also very important, how you receive it. You also have to have a positive, constructive mindset to know that these feedback are provided to you, not to personally attack you, but to make you better. So the reason I mentioned radical candor here when it comes to feedback, because this is saying that you should be caring enough about your team member, feeling confident enough with your team member to be able to tell them how they feel or what they've done, or somewhere you see they can make improvement. And you as an individual receiving this feedback should also know that the person giving you feedback cares for you, which is why they're telling you this. And within that, you can make each other accountable for something that your colleague is supposed to be doing and not doing, and providing the right guidance. One other important reason why feedback is so important is, and especially I mentioned, a lot of you are new, joined fresh, this is your first job. And if you are not performing, if you're not doing well, you really need to know. And sometimes even after providing all the guidance, all the helpful training, you still might not be able to do a job well. So it's important for you to know this information. It's important for the members around you, your manager, your TL, your colleagues, to inform you about this, because maybe you are in the wrong position, wrong role. Maybe this is not something you want to do, because doing something that you're not really doing well in, improving in, despite getting the guidance, means this is something where in the future you probably will not be able to progress either, which means it's better the earlier you get the information and earlier people tell you, or your team members tell you, means you have that enough time. You're not wasting your time. You have enough time to rethink about which path you want to take. Or even correct yourself if it's something within your behavior that there is some issues. And as I said, a lot of you are very young, which means you're still just in college or come out of college in mode. You're not quite serious enough yet, or not quite mature enough yet. So these are the times where getting the right kind of feedback really helps to shape up the individual as well. So I want to just remind everyone who joined at SJI, especially, we have this open culture. I want all of you guys to feel free to provide the feedback, and not just only provide when the form comes in for you to provide a formal feedback. Yes, that is also equally important. But every day when you come into office, or when you're not in, even when you're joining Zoom on call, or even the work you're doing or your colleagues doing, look into it and see if it's a good job, great job, mention it. Because as I said, feedback, it does give you motivation. So it's on individual, it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that you are providing the feedback. You're providing the feedback on time. There's no point also waiting for somebody who's done a good job to tell them after 2 months, or somebody's done a bad job to tell them after 2 months, because by that time, this person probably already made a similar mistake again, or they probably corrected themselves and they've become irrelevant. So make sure you mention it there and then. Feel free and confident that we have a culture at SJI that nobody should take any feedback in a wrong manner. And again, you also have to remember being humble, being respectful, and not giving feedback and criticizing anybody because for the sake of just criticizing or giving feedback. So being radically candid means being helpful, being humble, do it in private, and make sure you tell them it's immediate. And also receive the feedback in the similar manner. When you are getting something from a team member, means they have your best interest. They want to help you to improve. So that's my take on today's PDC about why feedback is important and why everyone at SJI needs to be radically candid to provide feedback to your colleagues so that you can help each other, help the organization have a more positive environment, and help each other also to learn and grow. And if you want to read the book, the book is available in SJI, all the offices, Radical Candor. Please do read it so it gives you more perspective on this. But overall, just at SJI, I wanted to make sure that you understand what kind of feedback we have formally, but feedback is also a moral obligation of every individual to provide so that you can help each other and you can help yourself also to learn and improve. So this is all my take today on feedback and being radically candid. Thank you for listening, guys.